Warning, this video contains in-depth and graphic footage, images and exploration of various highly invasive surgical procedures. Viewer discretion is advised. Hey everyone, welcome back to Installation 00 and this most detailed breakdown on the Spartan-II Augmentations. For clarification, this is a re-upload of the original most detailed breakdown on the Spartan-II Augmentations released in 2019. The original unfortunately fell victim to a copyright strike and I've made adjustments to the video to avoid that going forward, but I've also adjusted some of the information in this video to be updated with the newest emergent law. And, as I'm sure you're aware, I've re-recorded with my more updated hardware, so you're getting the full Installation 00 experience. The Spartan-IIs are humanity's greatest warriors. They are soldiers forged in the fires of war, trained, rightly or wrongly, from the age of 6 to be our most devastating weapon against threats to our continued existence. It can be argued that the first weapon the Spartans were given was their training, which gave them a tactical edge above all others, due to knowing only war from the earliest of ages. It was the first step they took on becoming the armoured killing machines that humanity needed them to be on our darkest days. But before the Spartans had their amazing Mjolnir armour, before the Covenant felt their wrath, and before the amalgamation of man and machine grafted these already formidable warriors into near mythical beings that we know them as, the Spartans had only their bodies. The training could only take their capabilities so far, and we needed so much more from them than nature could impart. Thus, the Spartan-IIs received a plethora of biological augmentations, technological enhancements, and genetic alterations that forged them into living weapons. We will now go over these augmentations at a level of detail not available anywhere else. We will explore how these augmentations were implemented, the risks and rewards involved, and their long-term effects. It is worth noting before we start that the augmentations commonly listed in Halo lore actually only really scratch the surface of what would be necessary to implement such alterations to the human physiology. The primary augmentations on their own would either be entirely unfunctional or destructive to the body if it weren't for an array of secondary and tertiary supporting augmentations. As such, we'll be covering these additional alterations as well, as there is no question that they would be necessary for the Spartan-IIs to be operationally effective. That being said, before this original video was taken down due to the copyright strike, I had the privilege of having Dr. Chris Raynor review that video and talk through the specifics of the augmentations covered here from his rather learned position as a medical surgeon. A link to that video can be found in the description. So again, while some of the aspects of the tertiary augmentations may be speculative, it comes with somewhat of a seal of approval from a trained surgeon. Again, from here, this video contains in-depth and graphic footage, images and exploration of various highly invasive surgical procedures. Viewer discretion is advised. First, we'll look at the primary augmentations, which are the ones listed in most of the Halo lore and are the most consequential to a Spartan-II's physical prowess. The Catalytic Thyroid implant is a small platinum pellet implanted at the left thyroid gland, which contains a human growth hormone or HGH. This is implanted before all other augmentations, and its purpose is to release the growth hormone into the body to boost the growth of skeletal and muscle tissues. The hormone targets and stimulates the growth of fast and slow twitch muscle fibers, effectively producing significant gains in muscle mass, and also targets osteoblasts to help boost bone tissue formation and effectively strengthen the bone structure. This implant is offset by an already established comprehensive diet and physical exercise regime to fully facilitate the maximum effects of the human growth hormone. The the consequence to which is the Spartans will grow significantly in height and in muscle mass, but with instances of a suppressed sexual drive. Although this is not a universal truth, some Spartans did experience a suppressed sexual drive, which is not to say that the Spartans lack the ability to procreate, but instead just lack the natural innate drive to do so. Approximately 2% of the recipients to this augmentation experience elephantiasis as a rare side effect. Soon after the thyroid implant is beginning to take effect and no signs of elephantiasis present, the Spartan received muscular enhancement injections as part of the primary augmentations at the age of 14. These injections contain a protein complex that is injected intramuscularly. It targets the muscle's intracellular molecular machinery to help increase muscle strength and endurance, increasing the density of the connective tissues and fibers, making connecting tendons stronger and decreasing lactate recovery time. This can only be achieved by overwriting the GDF8 protein, otherwise known as myostatin. This protein acts upon the muscle cells and inhibits myogenesis, keeping muscle tissues limited to a certain size, hence myostatin. Myo meaning muscle, statin meaning stationary. Overwriting this protein is done using follistatin. This is the inhibitor of myostatin, thereby removing the protein that inhibits muscle tissue development. The obvious effect is that muscles grow significantly larger and more powerful than a normal human, often exhibiting enlargement of the muscle fibers and occasionally duplication of the muscle fibers, adding to overall muscle density. The Spartan would be capable of feats of strength and endurance far larger and longer than normal. Spartans were able to achieve and maintain a higher level of functional strength and endurance than even lifelong Olympically trained athletes or powerlifters, and were able to recover from fatigue significantly faster than even the fittest of unaugmented personnel. The feeling of the muscle injections and thyroid implant together are said to produce feelings of extraordinary pain, as if the Spartans' veins had been injected with napalm, with sensations of pulsating like the veins are being torn from the skin. The body feels like it is on fire and feeling like shattered glass is being worked into the skin. 5% of the subjects would experience a fatal cardiac volume increase, basically meaning that their heart was incapable of keeping up with the demand of blood the body now needed and simply failed. The truth of the matter being that all subjects would have experienced this same fate were it not for additional supporting augmentations, which we will explore shortly. The long-term result was that this gave a Spartan the ability to lift at least 3 times their body weight, which is also approximately double the average, with this likely increasing as time passed and the Spartans orientated to the augmentations. This implies that a fully augmented Spartan out of their armour is capable of lifting over 1,000 pounds or 460 kilograms at the age of 14, going up exponentially as they get used to the upgrade. The occipital lobe is the visual processing centre of the brain. A complex surgical procedure is performed on the capillaries of the left cerebral hemisphere, where the blood flow is reversed, boosting the blood flow to the retinas of the eyes. The retina is made up of light-sensitive cells called rods and cones that collectively receive light, colour and detect movement. The surgeon administers anaesthetic, and once the subject is unconscious, work begins incising through the skin at the rear of the left of the skull. A small section of the skull is removed, and the surgeon then begins the process of rearranging and re-engineering the capillaries, being the smallest blood-carrying structures of the circulatory system, thereby increasing the amount of oxygenated blood available to the retinas. Once completed, the section of skull is replaced and fixed into position. The incision site is closed and sutured, and the subject's head then wrapped in bandages. The surgery results in a marked visual perception increase, including the ability to see in near perpetual darkness, see finer level of detail, and ability to detect more subtle movements from a distance and enhanced colour and contrast perception. There is an 11% risk of retinal rejection and detachment, leading to permanent blindness. This surgery would only go so far as to increasing a Spartan's visual acuity, and as such, there are again supporting augmentations that could assist this augmentation to be more effective. This is also made evident by the Spartans reporting that their eyes bled in the mornings after the augmentations were received. One of these supporting augmentations could be a bionic lens implant in addition to the aforementioned occipital lobe augmentation. The eyes themselves were re-engineered as well. The surgeon would cut a small incision vector into the edge of the cornea where small tools would then be able to access the organic lens and remove it. Time would also be taken to clear the vitreous, the fluid inside of the eye, of any debris or floaters. Then an engineered bionic lens would be implanted and affixed to the muscles behind the iris. This lens is near optically perfect. It focuses light approximately 4 times better than the organic lens of the eye, meaning that a Spartan on average could read text from 80 feet away that a normal person can only read from 20 feet away. Once implanted, the incision self-seals and the eyes heal themselves thereafter. These two augmentations in tandem give a Spartan superhuman visual perception, and is helped still further by additional augmentations, the primary one being the superconducting fibrification of neural dendrites. Nerves, while extremely good at transmitting chemical messages, still have physical limitations due to the natural resistance present in all materials, even electrically conductive ones. It means that signals have a limit to how fast they can travel from the brain to muscle. The average nerve conduction velocity for humans is around 80 to 120 meters per second, plus brain and muscle processing time means that reaction can happen in as little as 21.5 milliseconds, or a little under a quarter of a second. The dendrites of the nerve cells are extensions of the nerve cell that propagate the electrical chemical signals from the neighbouring cells to the cell nucleus. They are infused with a nanoparticulate superconducting material that carries these electrochemical signals significantly faster than the dendrite on its own. The superconducting material is then aligned into a fixed ultrafine fibre within the dendrites via resonant electromagnetic fields. Once these connections have been made, the remaining dendrite protoplasmic material is sculpted back, reducing the overall mass of organic material in favour of the superconducting fibres, but preserving the nerve cell nucleus, axons and myelin sheaths. This is made highly evident by the void between the spinal column and the skeletal spine, as this area would normally be filled to capacity with the spinal column. This augmentation is performed in the entirety of the central and peripheral nervous system with the exception of the brain. On top of this augmentation, a genetic and molecular level alteration is made to the oligodendrocytes and Schwann cells within the nervous system. This promotes the growth of myelin sheaths over the nerves and superconducting fibres, thereby insulating the neural signals and speeding up their propagation still further. Spartans have said that this augmentation feels like fire burning along their spines and spinal nerves. It doesn't take too long for the subject to get used to moving with faster reflexes, though they will inevitably experience clumsiness such as falling over, exaggerated reflexes and problems with coordination. The augmentation comes with a 12% risk of Parkinson's disease and Fletcher's syndrome. Once the side effects all settle down, the result is an estimated nerve conduction velocity increase to 240 to 360 meters per second, meaning reaction time is approximately 7 milliseconds, a 300% increase in reaction time, making Spartans so fast that during times of stress and adrenaline, they experience a form of bullet time, where everything around them seems to be moving in slow motion, but fast at the same time. This experience was eventually coined Spartan time. One of the most significant augmentations is the Carbide ceramic ossification. This is a hardened ceramic material grafted directly onto the surface of the skeleton, but the consequences to such an augmentation means that other supporting augmentations are required to ensure the ossification doesn't result in extreme disfigurement, injury, or even death. The material used is boron carbide, or an alloy of boron and carbon. Boron is used due to its strength and activity in regards to the minerals present in bone, such as calcium. When any material is used within the body, it has to be understood and investigated as to whether the material is biologically active. Iron, for example, would rust and corrode due to the body's heat, moisture level, and mild acidity. So using a substance like boron ensures no negative or biological processes can result of its use. Its mechanical properties make it exceptional for reinforcing the skeleton due to it having an extremely high hardness and fracture toughness, setting it as the third hardest substance known to man after diamond and cubic boron nitride, which has earned its nickname Black Diamond due to its very dark grey appearance. The carbide present actually assists in biological integration. Carbon is one of the most active substances and is very useful for the sakes of osseointegration because its chemical activity promotes molecular and submolecular bonding of the bone and metal boundary layer, resulting in a reduction in the osseointegration time, assisted by the interaction of boron and the mineralization of bones. This combined effect drops integration healing time to close to half the time of implants without the use of carbon. The surgery involves a lot of preparation. The skeleton is first imaged in 3D, creating an exact one-to-one digital copy of the subject's skeleton. This digital 3D scan is then used as the basis for 3D CAD modelling of the interlocking osseointegration plates. The femur or thigh bone, for example, will be rendered in 3D, and then two plates will be designed to match the exact surface shape and dimension of the femur, with interlocking hardpoints and openings towards each end of the bone, allowing the joints to continue natural function. The plates would then be 3D printed using a highly sophisticated construction method, wherein the boron carbide material would be designed to be macro and microporous. This means that the plates would have microscopic holes throughout the plate, which would serve two functions. One is to fully facilitate the bone and the carbide material fusing together, as these small holes would allow new bone material to grow into them, thereby anchoring them to the bones themselves, and two would also facilitate the microcapillaries between the bones and the circulatory system to reconnect post-surgery, to enable the bones to still function as blood-producing organs. This is why the amount of ossification had to be limited to no more than 3% total bone mass. For an average Spartan, their total bone mass makes up 15% of their weight, or approximately 23 kilograms. This means the total amount of ossification material is only 3.45 kilograms. The surgery starts by cutting the subject open along the lasered incision vectors that are traced all over the subject's body based on their own unique physical proportions and orientations. The incisions cut through the skin, the muscles are retracted out of the way, and the upper surface of the bones are removed. Then, the prefabricated boron carbide ceramic material is grafted onto the skeleton. The two halves or more then being fitted in place and individually bonded to the bone, thereby locking together and fully encasing the bone in the material. Nearly the entire skeleton is given the same treatment, including the spine, which in itself presented its own problems. An ossification plate had to be designed in two sections for every vertebra, one fitted from the outer spine and the other being fitted to the inner spine via access from the abdomen, then being locked together but without cutting into the spinal column. This augmentation is generally performed over several surgeries. The risks are a 3.8% failure rate due to possible mutations and compromised bone marrow matrix integrity. This is why the Spartans needed a catalytic thyroid implant to speed up their skeletal growth, as in pre- and near post-pubescent adolescence, skeletal growth spurts would cause irreparable bone pulverization. The feeling is described as like the subject's bones are breaking and as if the marrow is made of glass and is being shattered. Over time, these side effects would pass and the boron carbide ceramic material would fully graft to the bones, and the connection between the two would strengthen, making the bones harder and tougher with time. The result is that the Spartan bones become basically indestructible in all but the most severe of physical injury. This is not as far as the skeletal augmentations went. The reality is the Spartans' new enhanced musculature and hardened skeleton would all but destroy itself unless particular attention was paid to connective tissues of the joints, muscles and bones. This is where an array of biological and genetic alterations came into play, the first being an alteration to the process of osteogenesis. Bones during day-to-day life experience stresses and microfractures as a consequence to simply being used under the force of the body's muscles and environmental factors like gravity, as well as natural cell senescence. Cells known as osteoclasts are responsible for breaking down old or damaged bone material, and other cells known as osteoblasts are responsible for depositing new bone material. These are genetically altered in order for the cells to function at an increased rate, as well as fine adjustments to enable them to process the boron present in the boundary layer between the carbide ceramic ossification and the natural bone material. Further, molecular engineering is performed on the soft and connective tissues by altering the chondrocyte cells, which are cells that secrete the matrix of cartilage within the joints, by enhancing their ability to produce new cartilage matrices. Cartilage, once formed, doesn't heal itself if damaged. The chondrocytes, once they have secreted the cartilage matrix, become embedded and trapped within the cartilage matrix, thereby inhibiting their ability to further produce cartilage. Once the host reaches maturity, these cells generally stop working and the very gradual process of degradation begins. Finally, the tenocytes of the body are engineered to create a tougher quadruple helix protein complex formed in the elongated fibers of collagen. This strengthens the connection between muscle and bone and the stabilization of ligaments holding joints together. All these alterations lead to a system in balance where the increased strength of a Spartan's bones and muscles are offset by stronger connective and soft tissues, meaning the entire muscular skeletal system are enhanced to superhuman levels required of a Spartan. The Spartan neural interface is an upgrade of the neural interface all UNSC personnel are given at enlistment. It is an interface that accesses the basic IFF friend or foe tags that come as standard, and a filament of semiconductors that interfaces with the cerebral cortex of the host in a similar fashion to electrocorticography implants, but has some key differences. While electrocorticography is achieved by placing sensors on the surface of the brain to monitor brain activity, the Spartan neural interface is implanted within the brain tissue to both passively monitor and actively interface with the cerebral cortex, allowing thought to be translated into motion seamlessly. In addition to the standard functions of a neural interface, the Spartan neural interface is unique in that it is designed to allow an AI construct to directly interface with a Spartan's brain. Therefore, the AI resides both inside the armor and inside the wearer's mind. Essentially, it's in both places at once. The interface allows the AI to access most of Mjolnir's internal systems, though the Spartan has override control. The AI is capable of significantly improving the data transfer rate of the motor cortex of the Spartan and Mjolnir's processing unit, further improving the Spartan's already lightning-quick reaction time. The surgery involves accessing the back of the skull just above where the neck vertebrae meet the skull. A section of skull is removed directly over the cerebellum, the part of the brain that receives information from the sensory systems, the spinal cord and other parts of the brain, and is responsible for coordinating voluntary movements such as posture, balance, coordination and speech, resulting in smooth and balanced muscular activity. The semiconducting filament is implanted throughout the cerebellum and into the midbrain. The filaments naturally migrate, unravel and grow on their own for the next 6 to 9 months, during which time the resolution of the signals that the filaments can detect becomes stronger, thereby increasing the connection between the Spartan and the suit. The permanent insert collar is put into place, where it is then left to heal into the skull and the surrounding skin, thereby sealing the wound, and then becomes the direct interface between the Spartan and their suit, and any AI they carry as well. This implant is critical to the Spartan-Mjolnir combination because it is not only the direct interface between the two, allowing the Spartan to control Mjolnir with their own neural impulses, but it also increases the reaction time of the Spartan by effectively bypassing the body altogether. As previously discussed, although Spartan's reaction time is already lightning fast, they still come nowhere close to the speed that electrical signals can travel through wires. The Spartan neural interface takes the impulse created by the brain from within the brain and makes it directly available for conversion to a digital signal by Mjolnir's movement systems. Since digital signals travel through the suit circuits at 280 million meters per second, thought to motion happens so fast it's nearly impossible to chart. Since the systems translate the thought to motion faster than the host's nerve conduction velocity, the wearer sends the impulse to move, but the system has already translated this and sent the signal to the relevant movement systems before the signal has really even exited the brain. So on one level the Spartan moves Mjolnir, but then on the other Mjolnir moves the Spartan. This reaction is so fast it's nearly impossible to track, and only a Spartan with their altered neural physics and enhanced physiology are able to handle such an increase without causing themselves serious injury by attempting to adjust and counter-adjust to the almost preemptive motion. The sudden increase in the supply of blood needed to enhance the muscles necessitated the need for an upgrade to the Spartan's cardiovascular system. An electroactive polymer weave is implanted to the muscles of the heart. Electroactive polymers, or EAPs, are materials which deform in shape when an electrical field is applied to them. The EAPs used are fully biocompatible, meaning that they can be used within the body with no adverse effects, and they were particularly sensitive to the electrochemical potentials created by the sinoatrial node to regulate the heartbeat. As the sinoatrial node creates the impulse which travels across the heart and causes the muscle to contract, so the implanted EAPs also contract, giving the heart an additional contraction force, thereby alleviating some of the mechanical strain on the heart to supply the muscles with enough blood. This, in combination with a Spartan's training, induces a state known as athlete's heart syndrome, whereby the heart has a higher cardiac output and a slower resting heart rate of around 40 to 60 beats per minute, although some Spartans have been witnessed with heart rates as low as 30 beats per minute. Due to the mechanical assistance that is afforded by the EAPs, the heart is capable of pumping a much higher volume of blood per beat than average. Over time, the increase in the heart's ability to pump oxygenated blood allows the body to adapt to higher physical stresses, leading to an increase in muscle growth and further enhancement of the Spartan's already impressive endurance. Due to the increase in blood volume, steps are also taken to reinforce the arteries leading to and from the heart. Specifically, the arteries are implanted with a high-tensile biocompatible synthetic collagen weave, which not only allows the arteries to handle higher volumes of blood flow without any particular adverse effects, but also anchors them more securely to the heart, to avoid problems such as separation from the heart under extreme impact or deceleration. In addition to these physical augmentations, there are also a series of genetic augmentations that serve various functions. The first alteration was to the Spartan's telomeres. This is a compound structure at the end of the chromosomes. It can be likened to the plastic tabs on the end of shoelaces, in that when you cut them off, the shoelace begins to fray and fall apart. Every time a cell divides, the telomerase is not copied fully. Over time, this causes shortening of the telomerase, eventually leading to the cell being either unable to reproduce itself, known as the Hayflick limit, or a corruption in the DNA strain that leads to corrupt cellular mutation, although it is worth noting that mutations that lead to cancer are decidedly rare in the 26th century, having been a trivial and easily curable disease as of the 22nd century. A Spartan's cells divide perfectly every single time due to an adenoviral telomerase replacement therapy. This means that a Spartan's biology attains a state known as cellular immortality. This doesn't mean that Spartans are immortal, as it takes significantly more genetic engineering and control of environmental factors to attain true immortality, but it does however mean that a Spartan's body ages significantly slower than a normal human, and injuries that would generally cause severely inhibited function later on in life are cancelled out by the body's ability to rejuvenate its own cells. Were a Spartan to lead a normal life, it is currently estimated that the Spartan could live to be over 200 years old. That being said, this augmentation is still so new and a Spartan hasn't reached that age bracket yet, so it is still currently theoretical. Additional genetic alterations were also made to the Spartans to make them more tolerant of various diseases and illnesses, boosting the immune system and making them significantly harder for ailments, infections and diseases to take hold. Genetic enhancements to the body's healing response is also altered, allowing a Spartan to recover from an injury significantly faster than the average human. A current example states that the healing factor is approximately 10 times faster than the average human, as when John 117 severely injured his quadricep during battle, the injury's level of healing was observed to be that of a normal human after 10 days of full bed rest, while John 117 had achieved this same level of healing in just 24 hours, all while still running, kicking and fighting. There are a further 4 genetic alterations that are listed in Dr. Halsey's journal that at the time of the Spartan-II's augmentation were outside of acceptable parameters of failure, but all 4 of which were assigned to continued research and development, and that also made appearances in subsequent Spartan generations, so it's reasonable to assume at some point after the Spartan's initial augmentation these additional alterations were given to some of, if not all of the surviving Spartan-IIs. These include adrenal thermal metabolase, which enhances adrenal response under physiological distress, leading to significantly higher adrenaline levels, which speed up reaction time and switch off the body's natural safety parameters to avoid injury during physical exertion, allowing the subject to hit faster and harder and lift significantly heavier weights. Cyclosynthetic neurotransmission gene sequencing, which are suggested at increasing intelligence and cognitive markers, leading the subject to have a much faster learning speed, higher intelligence, better abstract and creative thinking, and may even have had additional beneficial effects when considering a Spartan's ability to carry an AI within the Spartan neural interface. The increase in cognitive function may have also benefited the AI by giving it more processing power, leukocytic coprotein complex and microfibrin spindlase, which leads to wound suppression and near instant blood clotting of vascular injuries, affording a Spartan the ability to stem the bleeding from wounds nearly instantly and speed up the healing process thereafter, while also minimizing down on the amount of leftover fibrin clots that can narrow the blood vessels and lead to clot detachment and migration, heightening risks of stroke, heart failure and failed circulation. neuron surface viral macrophages, which was an adjustment to the neural tissue boosting selenium fiber bonding by 3 orders of magnitude, reducing signal-to-noise ratio within the nervous system and opening the doors of much more significant cybernetic augmentation and integration technologies. This could then lead Spartans to have a large amount of their organs replaced by synthetic and more efficient man-made counterparts, as well as functional augmentations that tie to the nervous system, further enhancing the Spartans' out-of-armour capabilities to the point that their physical and mental capabilities could enable them to become more of what can be defined as human. This augmentation also opens the distinct possibility of being able to create a literal human-AI hybrid, allowing the AI to interface with the brain and nervous system to such a level as to be considered a literal part of the Spartan. Again, these 4 alterations at the time of major augmentations fell outside of acceptable failure rates, but with continued research may, and evidently have, been refined and brought within acceptable tolerances, as many of these have appeared in the Spartan-III and Spartan-IV augmentation procedures. So it is reasonable to assume that the Spartan-IIs would have been the original recipients of these ahead of the 3s and 4s. Thanks for watching, commenting, liking and subscribing. I just want to give a quick shout out to my patrons and YouTube members: Spartan10148, my Metarch, Dylan, FalconX003, Kenwood, Irrefutable Justice, Leon, Neek and Ramiz, my monitors, Alvin, Andrew, Brand, Brian, Cameron, Chris, Darian, Devon, Flaming Halo, Greenblood, Kyle, Legions Lost, Michael, Prophet Bear, Spartan and Wolf, my sub-monitors, my fleet of Strato Sentinels, my diligent enforcers, and all the other awesome people that have jumped aboard to support the channel over at Patreon. Another shout out to Todd Morrison, my Transcendent YouTube member. And just one quick reminder to support us on all major social media channels, including Discord. Much love from 00. Take it easy everyone, and find peace in the domain.